We spend a lot of time checking out painting content online. This can come in the form of YouTube videos with painting tutorials and things like that, or in just looking at other people's painting on different websites. It's all designed to help us get better at painting, but sometimes what we need is to get smarter at painting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'll catch you after this.
Pickle jar, miniatures, excellent.
Hello and welcome to the Pickle Jar. My name's Josh, and today we're going to be talking about how to paint smarter. Now, what I mean by that is quite simple, really. If you're painting a big army full of loads of the same type of miniature, you're going to need to be able to get through those pretty quickly without getting bored, and you're going to want to be able to do it in a nice, simple way. That's what I mean by painting smarter. Miniature painting doesn't always have to be about getting the smoothest blends and picking out every single little bit of detail and painting it up to perfection. Don't get me wrong though, if you're painting up a display piece or something for a competition or even a display army like I'm doing with my salamanders, then the stuff I'm going to talk about here maybe isn't for you, because you're going to want to push your painting up to the top level. If, however, you're just painting for an army or for something to use at general tabletop standards, it's going to be viewed from an arm's length or on the tabletop most of the time, then these tips might just help you get through it. These tips will not only help you get through your big, tedious amounts of miniatures in a fast way, but it will also help you spend more time on some of the centerpieces for your army that are going to be looked at a lot more than the basic infantry and troops. Today we're going to be working on 3 Dark Eldar Cabalite warriors, and I'm going to be showing you 3 different ways to paint these up to a nice tabletop standard with minimum effort. So the first method is probably the easiest and uses a technique that a lot of people seem to turn their noses up in the painting community, and that's dry brushing. All I'm doing here is taking a light blue and then giving the model a light dry brush from top down to bottom, making sure to pick out all those lovely edges on the armour. If you're not too confident with dry brushing, then you can always go a little bit lighter first until you get comfortable with it and know how much paint to add on, and then go a little bit heavier once you're feeling more confident. Now, I'm showing you this in real time so that you can see exactly how quickly I managed to paint this armour. Obviously there are some small detail bits that you're going to need to pick out afterwards, but if you manage to get all the armour painted this quick, then doing the batch painting on all the details isn't going to take that long after all. Now this method works best if you're working up from a dark base coat and are wanting to keep the shadowed areas as dark as possible, as the dry brushing won't reach those recessed areas, but it will pick out all the raised up detail. You can always complement this with a shade or even a thinned down contrast paint to take away some of the texture that you sometimes get from dry brushing, but obviously you don't need to do that. Speaking of contrast paints, let's move on to the second method. For this, I'm going to start out with more dry brushing, starting with a darker grey and then doing a lighter second pass with a lighter grey to give some transition between the shadowed areas and the brightest highlights on the edges of the armour. You can then take your preferred colour of choice, in this instance I'm using a lovely red contrast paint, and apply that to all of the armour on the model. What this will do is be its brightest on the edges where you use the lighter grey from the dry brushing, and then it will go darker in the recessed areas where there is still the black base coat and the darker grey that you used first. This creates a nice transition from the dark up to the light, but still coats the entire armour in the same colour. Now you can obviously use different colours, and you can even vary up the colours that you use in the dry brushing stage. If you want to go all the way up to white on a very final highlight so that those edges are really nice and bright when you apply the contrast paint over the top, then go for it. I tried to stick with a darker look on this model in particular, but there's nothing stopping you from trying out your own variations. Now, as I mentioned, this method works really well if you're wanting the armour to all be one colour but still have that nice shade and highlight look on there. It's really simple to do and takes absolutely no time at all. Now both the methods that I've shown you so far have been for darker style armour, But what about if you're wanting to paint something a little bit brighter? Well, this next method might just be for you. What I've done here is base the model in black and then I've given it a zenithal spray with an off-white colour. Now, I have used spray cans in this example, but if you've got an airbrush and some white ink, then using that as a zenithal gives a much better end result. I'm just using spray cans here to demonstrate that you are still able to do this with spray cans. You don't always have to have an airbrush. What I did then was apply a contrast paint over the armour, using it more as a glaze, letting the pre-shading I did with the sprays do all the work. Now, I could have gone quite a bit darker on this example, but I wanted to give an example of a brighter finished result, so I decided to lay off the darker areas and go a bit heavier on the zenithal highlight. But again, it's entirely up to you how you use this technique. With all three of the methods that I've shown here, you can quite easily and quite quickly get the majority of a model painted up to a good tabletop standard, just leaving the detail areas to pick out later on in the batch painting stage. As I said at the beginning of the video, these methods aren't really designed to help you win any painting competitions with your miniatures or anything like that. These are easy methods designed to get your miniatures looking good and on the table as fast as possible. What time-saving techniques do you use when you're painting your miniatures? Let me know down below in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you have, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you want to help support the channel, check out the description down below for our affiliate links. If you'd like to see more of me, or if you've got any hobby questions, I live stream here on the Pickle Jar every Wednesday evening at 8 PM, or there's a link to our Discord down below in the description as well. That's all from me, and I'll see you next week with another video.